can change the
Spreading
world.
money around the world and making an impact. Johanna Posada of Elevar Equity. Johanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you very much for spreading money around the world. Is that right? Is that what you do?
Well, Elevar Equity is an investment firm. It's co-founded by 4 partners. And what we do is we invest in companies. Our focus is really on finding extraordinary entrepreneurs and backing them and capitalizing them. And what they're doing is they're providing essential services. So things like financial services, healthcare, education to disconnected communities in emerging countries. And what I mean by disconnected communities is communities and clients that live within these communities that haven't had access, or at least appropriate access, to a lot of the services, systems really, again.
You know, when I think of investment firm, though, I'm seeing Gordon Gekko and really some very difficult, aggressive stuff. There may be some aggressiveness about what you do, but it seems like the making an impact part is that you're making a social impact. Is that right?
It is true. This space has been called impact investing. And what it is you're, again, investing in companies or funds, and you're aiming for a social return alongside a financial return.
We're going to get to measurements and all of that in just a minute, but I wanted to quickly go over Elevar. And if you go to the website, I think it's elevarequity.org, is that right?
.com.
Elevarequity.com. We're going to be sure to have it up on the screen. You talk about you back extraordinary entrepreneurs who do one of 4 things. 1, serve disconnected communities. How can an investment firm serve disconnected communities?
Well, at the core of what we do, there's a principle. And that is that every human being has social and economic value. And this is really based on an observation. We do a lot of work in the communities that we work, that we invest in. And what we notice is that they are very active economic agents. There's thriving informal economies, right, within this.
Informal economies, like we here in the United States call it the black market economy or the cash economy, is that what it is?
Well, it's very cash-based, right? It's informal in the sense that they're not necessarily linked or formalized with the government and all the registration and the infrastructure that needs to be around it.
And there may not
but
be a
it's
team
still
of,
operating.
And a team of CPAs wouldn't be helping them with spreadsheets, is that?
No, and in fact, a lot of their information, right, is again, it's informal. It's there. It's in their head. A lot of think about a little convenience store, right, in the middle of a rural town in India. They may not be paying taxes. However, they have a thriving business. They have clients. They know how much inventory they have. So again, it's informal economies that are thriving, right? And communities that have strong social cohesion. So people know each other. They trust each other. They step in for each other, and there is clear demand for a lot of these essential services. And again, there's supply, but the supply usually is done in an informal manner, like think about loan sharks.
Yeah.
True. And so the people end up paying more for low quality services. So when you look at that condition, there is an opportunity, right, to come in and invest in companies that are providing those services, right, and doing it in a manner that is high quality, high price, and the markets are so large that there will be a return. There's an undervalued asset there.
Well, that's the second bullet point then. It says you believe in market-driven impact. So it sounds like we're talking about people at the bottom of the pyramid. Is that right?
It is. Usually it's low-income communities. There's always some play around what the definition of low income and poverty is. But what we see is even think about Latin American migrants in the US. They live in a developed country, and yet again, they're a community that hasn't had access to a lot of the services that you and I have had.
Yeah. So in terms of believing in market-driven impact, that's also at the core of Elevar Equity.
It is.
What does market-driven impact mean to you?
Well, it's, again, they're establishing companies that are being built on a sustainable model. So they need to make it a viable business that has margins, that has profitability, that can grow, and that can attract capital. Because for us, the growth really, at the end of the day, results in more outreach, more clients, more services to these clients. And so what we're looking for are viable companies that are growing, right, and that can deliver returns.
Now, the next two, then the final two bullet points don't sound like Gordon Gekko at all. And this is one that you want to improve people's lives. That doesn't sound like any kind of investment firm that I know of.
Well, and again, for us, when we got involved in this, it was about improving people's life. And the entrepreneurs that we back are there because they do want to improve people's life, and they succeed when the clients succeed. So I think at the center and core of what we do is the client. And if you take a long-term perspective, when you think about what's going to be good for the client, it's going to be good for the business. And what we found is that when you provide all these clients the services, you're unleashing amazing potential.
So we're going to get even to that too. Again, this being a quick overview, but then you said something else, and this is your fourth bullet point, which is you succeed. Elevar Equity succeeds when your clients succeed. And that may very well be normal of a bank type finance, but it's not necessarily. And how you guys again are showing a difference. Is this the core of impact investing?
It is. Again, your aim is to produce measurable social impact. So however you define that, right, you're looking to have impact in people's life.
Let's talk a little bit about you, Johanna Posada. Do you think of yourself as a social worker?
No, not necessarily. I think of myself as an investor. The type of discipline that we bring is the same discipline that you would have in other markets. We really, I think the commercial and the investing discipline keeps us very real and accountable. But I also think of myself as having a very clear objective of what we want to do, and not steering or getting confused.
What got you to this place? What got you to want to do what you're doing now, spreading money around the world, making a social impact?
So this is just a little about me. I'm originally from Mexico, and so you're saying, that's where the accent is from. But I was born in a poor emerging, developing country, right? And I was fortunate enough to actually be born in a middle income family in this country. And what that gave me was access to an amazing education and actually access to a lot of opportunities. But what I realized is that I was in a very unique position, because what's really very real about Mexico is when you look around, there's huge contrast. There's contrast between the rich and the poor, and it's there every day. It's hard to explain, but I went to a school that was right in the middle of a barrio, right? There was poverty all around, but the school had people that were very, that had money, and so when you look at that contrast, it's a bit unnerving. It's unnerving that one of the richest individuals in the world is actually Mexican, right? And so when I had these opportunities, for me, it was about responsibility. It was about, when I grow up, right, what am I going to do to make a difference? Because this is not sustainable. Yeah.
Did you ever, when you were growing up and you were growing up as in a middle-class family, but with poverty all around you, were you ever in fear for your own safety?
Not really. Not really. I think people, you're born into an environment, you know what to do, not to do. There's of course you wouldn't walk around, some places alone, but no, life is, it's just your normal.
That's exactly though a perfect segue in what I wanted to ask about, and about the impact investment that Elevar does, and in dealing with people in wildly diverse communities, and largely lower and low income, maybe even bottom of the pyramid. So the question being is, how do you determine where you're going to go, who you're going to invest with?
We do have a geographic focus. And that's a little based on, where we're from and where our team is based. So we invest mostly in India and in Latin America. And again, mirrors a little our networks, right? Because a lot of the deal flow that we get is just through the relationships we have.
Yeah.
Now, once you have determined a bit where geography is, you are looking at certain conditions in terms of just macroeconomic stability, right? And making sure that there's economic growth. And we are looking at communities that have some of the things that we've spoken about, like social cohesion, right? There has to be just a very basic of functioning economy. So we haven't worked, for example, in countries that have been torn because of war, that are, not rebuilding themselves, because you don't find those conditions within those communities. But we are looking for those communities, and again, it's low-income communities that are disconnected from global systems, that if you provide access to a lot of the systems, you will have an impact.
So for example, in India, you are likely to work in most of the country, but on the Kashmir area, you're not likely to work.
That could be a fair statement, yes.
Now, in terms of communities with social cohesion and an economic system of a sort, then you have to go in and you look at individual entrepreneurs. Is that the way it works?
Yes. So I think what we've done, and we've been doing this for over 8 years. So what we've done is, the first thing is you spend a lot of time with, in the communities with the clients. So we really try to see what are the needs. We're not pushing what we think the client needs. We're listening to them. We're trying to understand what their needs are, right? And I think when you're within those communities, you understand that there's a lot of misconceptions. What a lot of people see from the outside is not necessarily true. Like, a lot of people do have assets, for example, own a home. Maybe not perfect title, but they've been living in that home, generation after generation. And so once you understand the needs of the communities, and we form our theses around those needs, because we're really thesis-led, then you start trying to find entrepreneurs that understand them, right? And understand the needs as we do, and that are building this extraordinary companies.
But in these communities, don't you find that probably the number one need is clean water and ample food, and that ample food is oftentimes tied to a supply chain that doesn't necessarily exist, and as a result of that, you need the government to provide infrastructure?
So there's basic infrastructure, and I agree. There's some areas that we understand need other type of capital or government intervention, and that's not the best areas for us, right? We're looking at areas where we think we can have an impact and that you can build a sustainable business around it. So it is financial services, right? Where you can see that type of growth and that type of margins. We've also found amazing entrepreneurs in healthcare, right? Education depends on, but again, it's I think you are right. There's basic systems that sometimes do need a little more philanthropic capital as well as government intervention. And then once you have that basic, base, then you're building on top of it.
So you guys are not philanthropists. You're not handing money out. Instead, you are investing it in people who are entrepreneurs themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we are expecting a return. Again, you expect a measurable social return as well as a financial return.
We're going to take a very short break. We're talking with Johanna Posada of Elevar Equity. They are an impact investment firm that works primarily in India and in Latin America. They have an office in Seattle, Washington, and that's where we are coming from, the Rainmakers and Public Exposure Studio right here at the Hub Seattle. Johanna, I wanted to ask about something you said before, that oftentimes that the economies that you choose they don't pay taxes. That's not going to build the community, though, is it?
It's not. So what we're trying to do, actually, is the entrepreneurs are building formal services around it. And so the government is very interested in what we're doing, because in a way we're formalizing that community, right? So the perfect example is financial services, right? Because think about, so we have a client, and he owns a little convenience store in India. They're called Kirana stores. And he considers Kirana.
Kirana?
And he considers himself an oil trader because oil is actually one of the commodities.
This is cooking oil and heating oil?
Exactly.
That kind of oil.
Right?
Okay.
He has some.
It's not an oil trader in New York that's,
No.
that's
No,
trying to make sure
not that
the,
type.
the cost of a barrel gets over $100 a barrel.
So his suppliers, right, bring him the oil, and usually as he sells it, he starts paying them. But they're financing him, so he's paying outrageous interest rates. I'm talking, 3-4% a week, or sometimes,
3 or 4% a week?
Yes, I mean
Wow.
they're outrageous. So
That's,
when you analyze it,
that's
they're
like
more than 200-300%, right?
Oh my gosh.
So what happens is we have this company which does small and medium enterprise financing, and they come in and they charge a rate of 20s, higher 20%
Because even
a year.
Wow,
okay?
because even microfinance, typically charges in the 40s.
Yeah, so again, larger loans, they can do that. And now this trader, the turnover he had a month, he now has that turnover daily because he now had the financing to pay their suppliers up front and not have to pay that interest rate, right? And so, as I said, it's what you just did there was you established a formal relationship, right? And that trader most likely, right, at some point will become a formal business. So you start to formalize the economies that we work in, which is an important aspect.
Yeah, and then do they pay tax? I mean, I don't know, is India a value-added country? Value-added tax?
Yeah, I mean, they usually take, and again, we all not only work in India, we work in Peru and other countries, and our companies are also, once they become profitable, they are paying taxes.
Yeah, you're paying taxes
of course.
too, yes.
Yes, and our investors are as well, if they get some profit. So.
All right, so let's talk about some of your portfolio then, if we could, if you're able to. Some of the, how do you match an investor with an entrepreneur? Is that the way you do it, or do you just have a fund? How does
We
it work?
just have a fund, right?
Okay.
What we do is we have a very typical investment structure, which is called a limited partnership. So we go out, we fundraise, we find entrepreneurs that, again, are aligned with our vision and understand what we're doing, and we form a fund. And so then we have 5 years to invest that fund in the entrepreneurs that we believe are
Well, forgive me,
successful.
but if I'm paying 200% interest, my vision is going to align with yours if I can only pay 20% to you.
The clients, right?
Yeah. So is it easier to find clients with your vision than it is to find investors with your vision?
So there are, clients. When you talk about the base of the pyramid, or you talk about the communities we're working in, there's huge potential there. There's 4 billion people, right, that are classified under this base of the pyramid. So I think that if you choose a community and a very essential need, there's a huge opportunity for growth, right? And you can scale very quickly. And so I think if they're providing a valuable product and service at a reasonable cost, and that's the key here, right? You've got the innovation is really in the delivery system. So if you can provide it at a reasonable cost, you're going to find the clients, no question about it. The end client is there.
So let's go back to some of those entrepreneurs who are making money for Elevar Equity. Let's talk about some of them.
So, and here I'm just generalizing. Usually we back people that have years and years of experience, that have worked in very senior positions in sometimes very large companies, big, well-known banks, telecom companies, that have managed people, that have managed profit and losses, and businesses, but that at some point in their life, they realize that they want to do something different, that they also want to have some impact. So a lot of them actually take the leap. They leave their very, good air-conditioned offices and their steady and secure paycheck, and they leap into this and they say, I'm going to build a company that's going to serve this client. And so they're extraordinary. And and what we have is people, again, that are looking at this and do want to build scalable businesses. They want to have profit. They want to be successful. But at the core of what they do is the client.
What kind of services do they provide?
So we've managed, we've invested in 16 companies. A lot of them have been microfinance, and those are loans in the, depending on geography, but they're small loans, mostly for individuals that have some type of business. So that's financial. We have done other types of finance services. So think about not an individual, but a larger business, small and medium enterprise that also needs financing, but they just need more. We've done low-income mortgages. We have great entrepreneurs doing low-income mortgages.
Like home mortgages?
Home mortgages.
So are you bundling? And are we going to be reading about you in the paper?
Are we bundling? Not yet. But we have entrepreneurs that are doing community banking. We actually have a fully licensed bank in Peru that's doing the savings as well as credit.
No kidding. So I got to ask you about this because I've not heard of this before, coming from essentially what is microfinance and then becoming fully licensed. What did you have to go through to become a fully licensed bank in that country?
So they were original. They got a, and this is historic, and we could talk about this for a long time. But they already had a license, which was kind of a savings and loan license, and it's called Caja Rural. So they were already regulated. What we had to do was, again, it's the regulators there are very prudential. And so you have to meet a lot of requirements. You're fully regulated. You have, just to meet quite a bit of requirements to have this bank. And,
forgive me for asking, but I got to. Do you guys make money?
So we have had returns. In fact, we're there's only a few impact funds that have actually returned capital to their investors, and we are one of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Does that mean it's a bad industry?
No.
Or is it just young?
It's I think it's young. I think it's young, and I think it's hard work, right? And you've got to be very careful because, again, you're looking for both returns. But as I was saying, the first fund that we managed has returned capital and had a return which is comparable to even some mainstream funds from the same vintage.
Yeah. You also talked a lot about measurability here, and I suspect it's probably a lot easier to measure the financial returns versus social return. How do you manage social return, and are you getting that?
We are. What we've learned is that you can't just have one. It's easy to talk about an IRR across companies, irrespective of what sector or what they're doing. Social metrics don't necessarily apply in that respect. What we try to do is that when we do an investment, we look at their client and what they're doing, and we try to define what are the metrics we think, right? We should use to measure this impact.
Yeah. What are some of the metrics?
So for example, we have a healthcare hospital in rural India, and what we look at is the number of cases that are being that the doctors are looking at.
Oh, so if you
every month.
so if you basically increase the number of people that the doctors in your hospital see, then that's a positive return.
It is, right? Because you're delivering that healthcare, whereas they would have had to go to maybe to a public hospital, which are not that high quality.
Now you've talked about working primarily right now in India and in Latin America. Is there a similarity, and are there differences in working with the people of both those two very different areas?
I mean, there's definitely both. We're talking about different countries, and you have different regulations, different infrastructure, languages, traditions, cultures. But what is amazing is that you do find that across them, the needs are very similar, right? So a person in rural Puno in Peru has very similar needs. I think even more similar than to say compare them to someone in Lima, which is a city, and has similar needs to someone in rural India. It's funny because my partner, who's from India, traveled almost 36 hours to get to Puno, you know, and after five flights, we get down in Juliaca, and he turns around and he says, I'm in the middle of northern India. Because the businesses are similar, the clients are similar, so there's a lot of similarities.
So poor people are poor people, wherever they are.
But they're also, you know, active economic agents, right? Mm-hmm. So the businesses and the level of activity, the vibrancy you see within these communities is outstanding.
So an easy question then. Mm-hmm. What makes a person in poverty get out of poverty?
I think it's opportunities, right? Access. So again, going back to me, mm-hmm. right? It's not that I'm smarter. It's not that I work harder, right? Than many of the clients or many of my Mexican fellow citizens. It's that I had access to a lot of things like education. Mm-hmm. You know, I had access to loans to be able to study. So I think it is about access to these global systems.
When I go to a very poor country mm-hmm. and I look at my daughter, who by the grace of birth is born in the United States and has a lot of opportunities, mm-hmm. and then I look there, the little girl in Ghana, for example, she could be just as smart or smarter than my daughter. It's just the opportunities are not there. Mm-hmm. And why is it that you and your partners want to take this tremendous talent that you obviously have and work in this field as opposed to working in a field where you can make just scads of money?
Because we care. We care. You know, I think we all come from very different backgrounds, but I have a partner which is Indian, another partner is Filipino, and the other one is American. Mm-hmm. And I think when we look at the world and where our values and morals are, we think that we need to do something, right? It's mm-hmm. not sustainable to just live in a world where capital is concentrated, right, in a few. You've mm-hmm. got to democratize the capital. You've got to push it down to those communities, because once you push it down to those communities, the agents, the clients there know what to do with it. They're actually fairly productive.
We have 30 seconds left. Very easy question. Mm-hmm. We've come back in 5 years, and I'm asking you this question. Mm-hmm. How'd you do? What are you going to say?
I think we did great. I mean, when I think let's start with the financial return, right? I think we will have more exits. I think we will deliver financial return. We've already reached 11 million customers. We've provided healthcare to 2 million customers. We think that that's going to be, more and more outreach and more clients. And what I'm hoping for is that, it's not only impact investing. Like, I hope that mainstream capital markets look at this and say, it's just investing, right? These people are valued customers. These people, right, are an asset, and so we should invest in them.
That'll be the last word. This has been Johanna Posada of Elevar Equity. We'll see you next time right here.